Each other, but for the people who hasn't met you, and for the people who will be watching our conversation, I would like to invite you to tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and what do you cherish in your profession, in your role?
I love that. What do I cherish? So many things.
Mm.
I am the chief coaching architect for Blanchard, which is, global leadership development company. What does that actually mean? Well, I'm still trying to figure that out exactly. I'm no longer the operational leader for the coaching business, but my job is to be a thought leader, specifically around coaching for our company. And also, I do seek to influence the coaching profession, which I've done since the beginning. So that's just kind of out of habit. And I'm on the board of directors and on the executive team for Blanchard. So I'm part of it. I'm part of a team that directs the strategy, the vision, the values for Blanchard. What do I cherish? So many things. I will say that I'm delighted to not be in the rough and tumble of operational leadership anymore. I managed people for probably 35 years, and I loved it. But it's a lot of work.
It is indeed.
It's a lot of work. And I do a lot of writing and kind of working on our products, and that uses a different part of your brain than operational leadership, which is, all day long, every day, numbers, budgets, meetings, decisions. And so I have a lot more time to think and reflect and talk to people and learn from people, so that we, as an executive team, hopefully can make better decisions.
So connecting reflection with the operational leadership.
Yes, yes. And supporting our operational leaders as well.
Okay, great. So you are the person who is leading the coaching, leading the development of coaching methodology and the coaching related products within the Blanchard. But also, as you mentioned, you have a profound experience as a leader and in operational leadership as well. So I would like to ask you, because probably you experienced yourself some myths about using coaching in practical management in managerial practices. So what is the biggest myth about using coaching as a manager that you would like to dispel?
I appreciate the question. And the idea that a manager or a leader could benefit from using the coach approach was not a new idea, right? But it was new in 1995 when I first started teaching my very first coaching skills class called Manager as Coach. And the only book that existed at the time on this idea was Max Landsberg's book called The Tao of Coaching, in which he actually used the original Blanchard model, which was very interesting, without permission, I might add, as so many people did and still do. But and what he had to say was smart. But we had to learn the hard way that if you work with a professional coach, their job is to have your agenda front and center. Absolutely. That's the job. But if you are a manager who wants to use that coach approach, or maybe use a coaching process or skills, you can't ever pretend that it's the person's agenda or the person's best interest that's always going to be at the forefront, right? Because as a manager, your first duty of care is to your team, your business, and to the organization. So you can't ever pretend that that's not true as a manager. And I think it's caused a lot of confusion. So we're hoping to, the more we talk about that, the more we can say, yes, you can be in service to people. You can work on your coaching mindset, right? Which is to serve the person. You can use your coaching skills. You can use a coaching process, but let's not forget that there are other agendas.
So you will never be a coach when you are also a manager, like in the pure form.
Exactly.
Okay. Therefore, what is the benefit for the manager to use coaching tools as a manager, to embed the coaching in their managerial practice? Why is it giving actually some boost in efficiency?
To me, it's just a way to build the mindset, the skill set, expand the tools in the tool belt, because we're asking people to bring themselves to work, right? We're at their full selves. We're asking them to bring their minds, their hearts, their creativity, their willingness to experiment and take risks so that companies can innovate. How do you create an environment where that's going to be true? And that's where the coaching piece comes in. So the way we define coaching, I know you know this, is that it uses conversations to create an environment. And we say where people will have accelerated performance or, kind of more robust development. But what we don't say, it's kind of a dirty little secret, is it's also an environment in which people can and might transform, right? Instead of these incremental, increase in skills, they might start here and go, oh, boom, and make some kind of leap by getting a different perspective or by seeing themselves differently as someone who maybe can do more, be more than they might have originally thought. And, the great managers, anyone who's ever had a great manager, they kind of do this intuitively.
They've learned by example.
Somehow. right? If you're really lucky, maybe you've had one.
Mm.
No one really had to teach them this, but it's kind of rare.
Mm.
So why do we have to teach it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we teach people how to be better managers. I think we have to teach it because you have to let your manager manage you, right? This is the job. This is what a good job looks like. Don't do it this way. Do it that way. I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you direction. I'll give you support along the way. And this is what the performance is. I'll give you feedback and you'll continue to develop. And that's management, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to let your manager do that or, right, you don't have a job anymore. But managers have to earn the right to coach. So for you, say, if you were my direct report and I were your manager, you would have to trust me to tell the truth about something that maybe isn't directly related to performance. Maybe a way that you see yourself or don't see yourself, an area that you think you might like to try, a dream that you have for yourself, or maybe even for the team. You would have to trust me to share something like that. And then the job for me as your manager is to say, okay, this isn't a performance conversation. And it may or may not be a conversation about your career. But I'm going to take my manager hat off right now and I'm going to put my coach hat on. And we're just going to talk about you. And what's most important to you and your vision for yourself. And what the obstacles are for you in your perception, in your opinion. And if I do it well, there is a chance that you're going to move towards whatever that dream is much more quickly.
With bringing this aspect of me not being only an employee, but actually being a human, being a person in front. Because this is at least what I've heard a bit when you said, okay, so I'm putting off my manager's hat, I'm putting on the coach's hat and asking questions, being curious about another person. You also mentioned trust as a very important mediator in this process. And this invites me to ask you about the relationship, because the trust is something that is a fundament for building the relationship in general. And I'm wondering, how would you see it as a factor in building a manager-employee relationship? So how is this relationship built and what destroys it?
Yeah. So I think earning the right to coach means that I'm, as a manager, showing up like a real human being. Right? I don't say, my employees, you can't be late, but it's okay for me to be late all the time, right? So that my words, my deeds are congruent. The inside matches the outside. I think that it's subtle, right? And sometimes when you don't trust your manager, it's maybe not because they've ever been awful to you, but you've seen them be awful to somebody else, or you've heard them say nasty things about somebody else. So you're not going to show yourself, because what if now they're talking about you to somebody else? So I think being a role model for not gossiping, not talking about people, that's a trust breaker right off the bat. There's a lot of conversation about authenticity. I'm a little bit on the fence about authenticity. So I think real authenticity in a business environment is to have an understanding of showing the true parts of yourself on your best day. Right? Tell the truth, but not too much.
So
not all of it.
Keep the side of the coin of the bad day maybe aside, maybe to other context and other environment.
Yeah, because you don't want to hide yourself, but you also don't want to. I don't. What am I saying?
Well,
like
yeah.
It's like any, but I think it's the same with employees. It's like tell the truth to the extent that you feel safe telling the truth, and kind of keep the gory details to yourself. Too much information sometimes it's like,
Yes, this notion that, well, if you don't accept me in my worst, then you don't deserve me in my best. It's not the story. That is
that might be true in a marriage.
Yes, it's not this kind of a relationship.
Right.
So this worst part can be put aside, not to. Well, I would say also that overwhelm your employees with your
right.
So we established that being a manager is not like being in a marriage with your employees, but nevertheless there should be some kind of a relationship, as you mentioned. There are benefits with having this trust fundamentals and also being having an integrity as a manager. Nevertheless, some of the managers refrain from investing into building relationship with the employees. As far as I know from our clients, from the people on that we meet in the training venues, they have many fears about such a relationships, that it will hinder their authority, or that will make employees not focused enough on their actual tasks and actual responsibilities. And also that they are afraid that the employees will be demanding more, because they will feel that, well, I am important to you, so I can demand more from you because of that. And also managers themselves also see that it's harder for them when they have the genuine relationship with employees to demand from them, to make them accountable for their tasks. So I'm wondering, what do you think about this fear that managers tend to have, that is taking them from this investment into the relationship?
I think it's completely reasonable and fair. I really do. So I think the key to creating maybe a higher level relationship where coaching can take place is first paying attention, right? Just paying attention to people. Because one of the number one human needs, right, is to be seen and heard. Like, I see you. Hello, you're there. Yes. Good morning. Right. So, and paying attention to what matters to you. And sometimes you can just ask the question, how, what do you think your strengths are? What matters to you when it comes to work? How do you know you've had a good day at work? And I'm not saying you're going to be able to spend most of your job doing the things you like best, but what do you like best? So we can hopefully mix in some of that into your job. But then also, when you just say offhandedly, oh, I'm going to my daughter's soccer game this weekend, to remember and say, how was the game? Right? How was the birthday party? I heard there was terrible traffic, to where you live last week. How was it for you? Mm-hmm. Just paying attention, right? Mm-hmm. And that, do we need a class on doing that? Maybe. But at least for me, I am so task focused and goal oriented. I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to smile, first of all. I wasn't raised in America. And in America, you have to smile. It's crazy, but you really do. And now sometimes when I'm traveling internationally, I feel like a crazy American smiling at everyone. But it's a habit. And I mean it, but. So it can be learned. It can take time to stop. Take 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. Oh, you had a cold last week. You seem better. Are you better? Just paying attention. Mm-hmm. The second thing I think is clarity. Mm-hmm. What is this relationship? What is your job in this relationship? What is mine? Who are you in this relationship? Who am I? How will we be together? Mm. If something goes wrong, how will we manage it? If you have feedback for me, I want to hear it. If I have feedback for you, do I have permission to give it to you? Now that's crazy, right? To ask, as a manager, do I have permission to give you feedback? Mm. Because really that's my job, part of it. But still, just the act of saying, it is my job to give you feedback. How would you like to receive feedback? And sometimes, especially maybe younger people, they don't even understand the question, right? Mm-hmm. They have to think about it. And then maybe the first time I give feedback, maybe it doesn't work for them at all, but they have permission to say, I'd prefer, I don't know, maybe if you gave it to me in the morning, so I wouldn't then think all day long, I wish I'd known that. Mm-hmm. Or at the end of the day, so I'm not distracted I don't know, I'm making this up. But the agreements, how will we operate together? What's your job? What's my job? So I can work out with you. If you have made commitments and you're not keeping your commitments, how should we deal with that? Do you think? I mean, I have my ideas, but we can create agreements together on how we navigate when things aren't perfect, easy, when things get hard. And if you think about it, the best relationships with friends, with family, are the relationships in which these agreements are made. Sometimes they're implicit, so maybe you don't realize it. Or they're agreements that you somehow got into without having thought about it, and you don't like them at all, and then you have to deal with that. Like, it's not okay that, right? And young people have to do that with their parents. Mom, don't call me every day. It's too much. You know, just these ways that we navigate all relationships. So I think it is the same. So that's clarity. And then the third thing, I can't remember the third thing right now. Attention, clarity, it'll come to me.
Okay, sure. When you mentioned this, making clear rules and making it clear, giving the clarity to the relations and discussing how we will run it, what are the ways of working between us. I actually, what popped up in my mind is the scene from, I don't know if you have watched the series, Young Sheldon. There is actually the scene when Sheldon is inviting his family members who had the quarrel, like the very relationship-based quarrel about the boundaries, calling each other, or as you said, like, don't call me every day or don't come too often. He invited them actually to write down the contract.
Yes.
With points and to sign it, because for him it was quite obvious. Okay, you have a disagreement, make it clear between you. Like, there is nothing bad in making things clear between us and naming them. I think that sometimes people feel anxious about bringing the stuff to the table. They assume that some things are obvious or some things are given, and they are not taking they are not influencing the situation. They are refraining of influencing, just leaving it be. I think especially employees might have this notion that, okay, this is how my manager is, so there is nothing I can do. With manager asking, okay, so do you have something that you would like to propose? How you would like it to be? This is giving also the space for impact from the employee, like showing, okay, you have a say in that. And I think that's quite nice. It's just showing that it is fine to discuss and establish things that are making this relationship more comfortable for both of us and more fulfilling for both of us.
Right. And it's co-created within the bounds of what's already kind of non-negotiable.
Yeah, there is some framework that we, there is an organization that we are part of. There are expectations of me. There are also expectations of you. There is like the role description as well. So yeah, there are some baselines that we need that are an agreed framework, but there is a lot of the things, how we will do things that we can, as you mentioned, my role as for example, your role as a manager is to give a feedback, but how will it be given? It's something that we can discuss, that we can agree on.
Right.
You also mentioned about this, there was a moment when you mentioned that when being very much task focused, it might be sometimes challenging to see and to react to the another person. Do you see other, or maybe the same, contemporary trends that influence the relationship between manager and employee, make it harder or make it easier?
Oh, well, I do think the perception of power is huge, because you can't deny, if you're my manager, you have tremendous power over me, over my job, over the projects that I get, over how my performance is measured and interpreted and reported back to the organization. And I think a lot of managers let their unconscious biases sometimes, or their preferences, lead them to misuses of power. I think people who want to be managers or leaders because they want power over other people. I mean, I think they're immediately suspect to begin with. Because they think, oh, I get to be the manager, I get to be the boss, it's going to be my way or the highway. Well, that never goes well, right? You're not going to get the best of people that way. And I think, it's not a lot of self-awareness. So I think power and an awareness for managers and leaders of how much power they do have, so that even an unconscious, offhand reaction or remark might carry more weight than you mean it to, right? So I think that's a big factor. And I think the trust piece, why would you reveal yourself to someone who might use something they learn about you against you?
Well, that would be stupid.
It would. It'd be stupid. Who's going to do that? Well.
So employees are reasonable beings, after all. Okay, so we established that this building relationship is an important journey that the manager should take. But especially when you are new to the role, you sometimes might find yourself lost and not know where to start. And what is the first thing that you should learn? What is the first things that you should hone? Some people start with learning about the interpersonal differences. Some people start with learning communicational techniques. So where do you really need to start when you are a first-time manager or adapting yourself to the new team? If you had to choose, where should the first-time manager start?
Wow. I remembered the third thing, by the way. Consistency. So I pay attention to all of my direct reports. I spend, some time with each of my direct reports every week. So, which brings me, what's the first thing a first-time manager should do? It's hard. From a coaching perspective, I think you have to start with what's accessible and possible quickly. So, very American expression, forgive me, the low-hanging fruit. So start with something that's like, I can do that. I can schedule regular one-on-ones with each of my people. Okay, I can do that. I can work to get clear with my boss about what's expected of my team, and then I can work with each of my people to make sure they know what their priorities are. Now, this sounds incredibly obvious, right? But you know this. The research shows that if you ask a manager and an employee, what are the tasks this employee is supposed to be doing in order of priority, and the manager makes the same list,
they don't align.
They don't align. How does this happen? So I think it goes back to the second part of the relationship building, right? Clarity. What is the job? If there's too much to do at any given moment, what is the priority? If you can't do everything, what do you choose not to do? What do you choose to do as well as you can? So I think that's a really good place to start.
Priority management, and also being in touch with your team.
Yeah.
Or choosing this one thing that you can start with and then build on it later in the process.
Yeah. And asking questions. What's important to you? What do you like most about your job? What do you like least? What do you think I should know? What do you think I should know? How's that for a question? What would you like me to know?
It's also putting yourself as a manager in a very humble position toward the employee.
Well, anyone who doesn't feel humbled by being a manager probably shouldn't be in the job. It is the most well, the only thing more humbling is being a parent.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Okay. Now I would like to change a little bit subject and expand a little bit the influence of this relationship between the manager and the employee, a little bit on the side of the employee, explore a little bit on that, and what I would like to ask you about is what is the significance of this role regarding another very important subject for organizations, which is mental health of the employees, of the people on board. So what do you see is the most important factor in this relationship between manager and employee that influences the well-being of the latter, of the employee?
This is, getting into the area of mental health is so far outside of my realm of expertise. But here's the one thing I think I'll say about it is if an employee is having trouble meeting their commitments, right? If they can't do the job the way the job needs to be done, they have to tell their manager. Because in the absence of information, the manager is going to make something up. Oh, what's going on? What's going on with Basha? She's not doing what she said she would do. That's so unlike her. Oh, maybe she doesn't like the job anymore. Maybe she hates me. Maybe she got hit by a car. Humans are imaginative. But if Basha calls me and says, I am really struggling, I'm having trouble focusing, I have an appointment to see someone who can help me, I need to take some time, or I need to move my deadlines a little bit. I think it's just people have to tell the truth. And they're so afraid. If you broke your leg, you would call your manager and say, I broke my leg, I'm in the hospital, I'm not going to be able to work. Why can't we do that when it's something else? Right? An inability to focus, an inability to sleep, an inability to think straight. It's not for me to throw diagnoses around. Even the professionals are having trouble with the diagnoses these days. It's so all over the map, right? But I think we need to be able to tell the truth if we can't do the job.
So the influence on the employee would be then that if I have this clarity in the relationship with my manager, that and also that I have a trust to my manager, I know what to expect, then it is more there is a possibility that if I would be struggling, then I will have a courage to disclose myself. And also this is important if I would like to also to maintain my my efficiency and to actually meet the expectations of the organization.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a fear, we know if you break your leg, they're going to fix your leg. You're going to take some time to heal. You'll probably come back to work, maybe on crutches. And if it's not a physical job, okay, fine, you can do your job. I think there are misconceptions about mental health, that if you have a bad moment or an episode, that you're forever unable to work. Which is that is just simply not true. I have seen that, right? And we know this. We know this about, say, postpartum depression. We know this about grief. At least in the US, I think we're completely crazy in the head when it comes to grief. That is a bad choice of words. I think we are completely misinformed about grief and how grief affects people and how quickly people should get over it. It takes people so much longer than they think it should take to function well after losing someone very close and dear to them. And I think managers need to be able to work around it. People need to be able to take leave, but know that there is a job for them when they come back.
A lot of assumptions that should be addressed and maybe, changed on both sides, on the employee or on the manager. At the conference, you gave us a wonderful speech about some fundamentals of the and studies, findings on the neuroscience that are giving some insights of how we should approach work-life balance, or how we should approach tasks at the work environment. What do you see as the biggest, let's say, blockages, potholes that we still have in organizations that are going very much against what neuroscience is telling us about how our brain works?
Where do we begin? I think there's still this idea that he who works hardest, somehow wins. It's just not true. It doesn't work that way. Our brains have our rational brains, our problem-solving brains, our strategic envisioning brains, our ability to self-regulate. It is pretty limited. Creative problem solving doesn't happen around a conference table of exhausted people who've had way too much coffee. It just doesn't work that way. And I'm not sure where the idea came from that it does, but people need to take care of themselves, especially leaders, right? We lose the ability to self-regulate. And self-regulation is part of consistency. And our ability to not let whatever's going on for us in our personal lives, our moods, affect our behavior and the choices we make with people. We lose that over the course of a long workday. So I'm just a huge fan of, okay, Zoom and Teams and being on camera, that did get us through the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge fan. And I'm a huge fan of e-learning and getting remote groups together. It is brilliant for that. But what happened to the one-on-one conversation that you used to get to have on the phone and walk? Mm. Or we meet together in the office and we need to have a conversation about something really interesting and we need to problem solve and brainstorm. Let's go for a walk around the block. It's a beautiful day. So I think the more opportunities we can take to move our bodies, get away from being in front of the computer, going to take a nap somewhere. I used to laugh because I had a lot of friends who worked at Google and they had napping pods. I was like, did anyone ever use them? No. No, people would never go home and use them to sleep at night. I worked for an investment bank in the 90s, rolling out a coaching program. In IT, people were getting ready for Y2K. People slept under their desks. It was not my experience that people got smarter by never going home. They just didn't. So
they just get more and more exhausted.
Yeah.
And the sleep, for example, sleep deprivation is like the biggest factor affecting the efficiency of the brain.
Yes.
It's a killer for our neural function.
Yes. Sleep deprivation. But also exercise. And I don't mean going to the gym and exercising. I mean just moving our bodies. Putting on some music in your office and dancing for 4 minutes. It's the best thing you could ever do for yourself, right? So I don't care anymore. And maybe, okay, I'm lucky. I have a senior position. I'm in these big Zoom meetings. I just stand up. I do yoga. I'm like, I can't sit. I cannot sit. It hurts. It literally is hurting me. So, yes, this Zoom stare, it's killing us all.
So indeed, there is a lot of things still prevailing in the organization is going against.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What was like but you already mentioned that you have implemented some on yourself that works for you. So at the end, can you give us the example of the practice that you applied for yourself that gave you the biggest change?
Boundaries around work. And it's funny because I set these really strong boundaries that I didn't work after 6 p.m. because I was with my kids. It wasn't for myself. It was so I could feel better about myself as a parent and not feel that constant, like, I'm not a good enough employee, I'm not a good enough parent, which most women anyway feel. But I found that it was much harder for people who didn't have that reason.
The pretext, let's say the reason outside of themselves.
Yes, the non-negotiable reason. You know, the nanny left. I had to be home. And it actually really, graded again. I mean, okay, to be fair, I did go back to work after I put the kids to bed. But that's just because I loved it. And it was interesting to me. But I think having boundaries around work and then keeping them in place, even after I didn't need to do it for somebody else, right? For myself, for my own well-being. That's a big one.
Thank you very much for the story and for all of the insights you gave me. Maybe I hope that you also gave them to our listeners, to our audience. Is there anything that you would like to give as a closure of our conversation?
Sure. It's one of the questions you didn't ask, which is, you know, that science is finding this mind-body connection. I'm not sure how they got separated. Well, I think it goes back to the Enlightenment and this idea that humans are rational and everything can be figured out with reason, which has been helpful, right? In some ways, we're able to build bridges and send rockets to the moon. I'm not sure how actually helpful that is to anyone, but what is true is we have neurons, brain cells in our hearts and in our guts. There is no division between the mind and the body. And in fact, what's very interesting to me is neuroscientists cannot really find a distinction between what we call thoughts and feelings. I'm having this thought, I'm having this feeling. Thoughts are somehow higher status than feelings. There's no difference. There's no difference. So if I'm sitting here like you're my manager and I'm thinking, she hates me, that's the truth for me. That is a fact for me. And how did that happen? Right? So I think we've fooled ourselves into thinking we're oh so rational. We're not.
There was this, instead of, analyzing and putting aside all of the elements, actually embrace it as a whole, as an interconnected entity, a person with emotions, with feelings, with body. The whole thing is our employee, and also the whole thing is a manager. So everything that is happening, it's having some relevance to what is going on regarding the performance and regarding the organization. That is at least the thought that I am finishing with.
That's a perfect thought.
Okay. Thank you, Madeleine, very much. Or feeling. Thank you, Madeleine, very much. I had a great pleasure throughout our conversation, and hopefully see you next time in Poland, see you next time in San Diego. We will see. Thank you.
Thank you.